Hello world, it's Sammy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Now in today's video, we'll be talking on 11 Linux command for beginners. See you right after the intro. Alright guys, let's dive straight into today's discussion. Hey, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the post notification bell so anytime I make a new upload, you get notified by YouTube. And then if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. I love you guys. Thank you. Alright, now you are on your terminal and then you might be looking confused because by our way of life or by our association, we are mostly comfortable using the GUI. Take for example, if I want to navigate to the blog page or the contact me page, if I want to click on this button, I know I just need to move my mouse there and then click it, right? Because I am actually seeing it. But now coming back to the Linux terminal, there is really nothing here for me to kind of click, just a prompt waiting for me to pass in commands, right? And it's really confusing because we are not used to this kind of system of navigation. So the very first thing, or the very first command we are going to be learning, is the man command. By man I mean this. Now, what is the man command? The man command is the short form for what? Manual. Okay, all right, before we even proceed, I think I will want to do this on my Docker machine. So I'm going to just grab one of my Docker containers to just run. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, I think I should just do this in here, then paste that. All right, perfect. So now I'm in my own Docker container. All right, so the very first command we're going to be talking on is the man command. Now, the man command, as I've said earlier, is the short form for manual. Now, just like when any producer or any manufacturer creates a device and packages a manual attached alongside the device, the manual is the developer's own resource to give us a good hands-on information about that particular command. Okay, so let's say we go man and then let's say we go man and then pwd, because that is going to be the next command we'll be talking about. So let's go pw man pwd. Okay, I didn't actually install that in this, so I think I will just need to exit and continue this action on my Vega machine. All right, so now if you look at this, it says what? The pwd command is actually a command that we use to print the current working directory, and then you can see that there are options that we could use, the P flag and then the L flag. So when you are lost about a particular command, or you really want to get more information or more idea about a particular command in the in your Linux system, then you should actually go with the man command and then passing the name of the command you want to get info about as an argument. Now, as we've talked about, or as we've seen, the pwd command. Okay, now the pwd command is the short form of saying print working directory. So we have P for print, W for working, then D for what? Directory. All right, now once I do this, it's just going to print what? My current working directory. That means my current position, like where I am currently. Now, a good way for me to do this, or let's just do this, if I do pwd, now I would also like us to note this. Now, when we run the pwd command and then we press on enter, it actually returns the absolute part of our current working directory. Now, as you can see right here, I have starting from the /. That is why I said it's going to print the absolute path. So it's starting from home vagrant. So the last directory here is always your current working directory. So my current directory right now is the vagrant directory, which happens to be my home directory. Don't confuse it, because if I'm going to now third command mkdir. Now the mkdir stands for make directory or create directory. Now, as the name implies, it actually helps us create a directory or a folder. Now, I also want to chip this in. In Linux, everything is a file. Everything is a file. Your system utilities, your command, even the pwd command, it's a file. And then I'm going to be showing you additional commands in which you could actually look up this. Okay, so the mkdir command is actually used to create directory. So now let's create a new directory, and then let's call this let's call this Linux basics. Okay, now I have created a directory called Linux basics. Fourth command, cd. Now the cd command stands for change directory. Now when you know your current position, now you want to now change your position from one point to another, like you want to change your current location. No, you have to use the cd command. Now how do you do that? You just do cd and then the name of the location. Now please note, you can only change from one directory to another, from one folder to another, not from a directory to a file. I would like to point that out. Okay, so I'm just going to be navigating to the Linux basics, and now you can see, now going back to our pwd command. Now if we look at this, now you can see, just as I said earlier on, the last directory or the last file here is usually our current working directory. This is opposed to the fact when I was at this point, when I ran the pwd command, and then it's showing me I'm on my vagrant. I'm on my vagrant directory. However, you are not seeing something like that. Well, that's because vagrant happens to be my default home directory, and that is the meaning of this tilde symbol there. The tilde symbol there is a short form or a Linux abbreviation for what? Home. So now you've learned a new thing again. Okay, now still on our cd command, please I would like to also point this out. Now there's a difference between dot and dash when passing them as argument to the cd command. To further explain this, I'm going to create another directory, but then before I create another directory, I would like us to learn another command again, which is what? ls. Now what does ls mean? Ls stands for what? List. Now the ls command is actually used to list the content of your current working directory. Actually, it's actually used to list the content of a directory, not really your current working directory. So pardon me there. Now why would I say list the content of a directory, not your current working directory? Here is why. Because when you don't pass any argument to the ls command, by argument I mean when you just only do ls like this, meaning, and you're not passing any argument, it's going to default to look at the content of your current working directory. However, if you pass a directory to it as argument, or or an array of directories to it as argument is then going to list out the content of those directories that is being passed to it as arguments. Now we know that we just created this directory called Linux Basics directory from this line. Yeah, cool. Now let's run ls. Now definitely we are not seeing anything here because it's a new directory. There's nothing inside, so that is the reason why ls is not returning anything. Okay, now ls is defaulting to look at the current working directory, but now let's say I want to look at the tmp directory. Okay, so I'll do ls/tmp, and now you can see, though tmp is not where I am currently, but I'm able to look at my tmp directory the same way I can look at my root directory, and then you can see this is what I have. So the ls command is actually used to list the content of a directory. However, when the directory is not passed to it, it defaults to look at the current working directory. And hey, we've been talking about commands. All command has options. Yeah, because if we look at man ls, going back to our man page, we could see we are looking at this part here, which is all called options. Now, what does the option stand for? What do these options denote? Now, with the help of options, or sometimes we call them flags, with the help of these options or flags, or whichever you might want to call it, we are able to fine-tune or add more functionality to our command. Okay, so I'm going to clear my screen with Ctrl L, or you could actually type CLER. That's another command you could use. I think I'll take this as a bonus. All right, cool. So now let's pass in options to our ls command. Now we've known that we could actually look at another directory, right? So let's say I want to look at my root directory, and then my and then my var directory. Now I'm looking at two directories at the same time. Yeah, so the very first one here, you can see this is the result for it. Now the second one, this is it here. Now remember, I'm still coming to the part where I'm going to explain the difference between this guy here and a single dash, right? Cool. Now back to our ls command. Now let's say I want to see a long listing. I want to get more options, or rather I want to see more details about these directories or the files in this particular directories. So I could do ls, then L for long listing. And then you might ask, but then Sammy, how are you able to know this option? Let's go back to our man ls, and then let's look at them. You could see you have the A flag here, or the option A, which tells you that do not ignore entries starting with dots. Now, what does this also mean? This means that all files or all folder that starts with dots should be included, because by default, when you do something like ls without passing in any argument, or even if you pass in any argument, as we've seen, it's going to ignore files that start with files or folder that starts with dots. But if we pass in the A flag, then we are able to see the entire files in that particular directory. All right, so let's also say that we want to list out the files in the var directory. However, we want to list them as a comma separated value. Oh, before that, let's say we want to do a long listing. Yeah, now you can see Now I am listing them in the long format, displaying both the permissions of each files, the ID, the group, and the metadata alongside what the file name. This part is usually what the size of the file, and this is the date the file was created, and then this is the name of the file. This is in the long listing what format. Now let's go back to the A option. Now, just as options, you could decide to merge options together, you could decide to separate them. And then now, me adding the A option here, you could see previously here, when we did the long listing, we didn't get the dots and the single and the double dots. However, when we passed in the A option, now we get the single and the double dot. Now, what does the single dot mean? The single dot stands from this particular directory or your current working directory. That's what the dot stands for. Why the dot dot stands for the parent's current working directory. That means this particular directory that you are working on, who is the parent? Like currently, I am on my Linux If I go back to my pwd command, I am on my Linux directory, right? But then the parent of this Linux basics directory is what? Vagrant. So dot dots will actually be referring to what? Vagrant. Or you could also say dot dot is going one directory backward. All right. Okay. Now let's say I want to also list this out as a comma separated value. Okay, remember I said I want to list this out as a comma separated value instead of it being listed like this, because this is the default way it's going to display content. So I'm going to do ls. Now previously I did something like this, right? And I said you could actually merge your options together. So this M option here makes me list them as a comma separated values. Now you can see I have backups, cache, lib, and all that. Now if I still want to add the A flag to be lamb, now you can see I have dots, backups. They are now listed as a comma separated value. Okay, now ls here, you can see because I didn't pass in any argument, it defaults to look into the current working directory, and my current working directory, there's nothing there, which brings us to the next command. Sorry, I am not counting it. I just want to expose it to as many commands that is needed to get you comfortable working on your terminal as a beginner. So the next command we're going to be looking at now is the touch command. Now the touch command is primarily for altering the timestamp of a file or a folder. Many people actually kind of relate the touch command to creating an empty file. Now you might be saying, oh Sammy, that's wrong. Hey, no problem. Let's look at what the creator said by using the man, then the touch. And then what are you getting there? It says was changing the file timestamp. And remember when we did this, I said, oh sorry, when we did this for this var, you can see here it's basically saying what? No, because there's no files here. So let's look at this. Remember I said this is what? The timestamp. This here is the size. This here is the group. This is the owner of the file. And then this is the permissions, right? Cool. So now, previously I did Control L to clear my screen. I'm going to be typing clear to clear. And now I have a fresh start. Okay, now it doesn't, when I actually typed in clear, it doesn't actually mean that what I did previously has gone? No, because I can scroll back up. Okay, yep, I can scroll back up here to actually get back the content of what I did before. But then let's go back to the long listing of var. Let's go back to the long listing of the var directory. Okay, so this is what we have, right? This is what we have. Now, when we are using the touch command, it's primarily used for changing this timestamp of the file if the file exists. Now, when the file that we are passing as arguments to the touch command doesn't exist, it then creates that particular file and then adds those the timestamp, which is the date it was created and all that. So remember, this is empty, so I'm going to say touch. Now you could pass one file, or you could pass in group of files. Let's just say I want to create test1, test2, and test3 as empty files. Now if I do my ls, I am having them being listed. If I still decide, I want to list them as a comma separated value, you see. All right. Okay, cool. Now, this is what we have. We've been able to create files now on my current working directory. Now, let's say I create another directory. Let's call this new directory. And then let's seed into new directory. Okay, now we've gone, our current working directory now is the new directory. Let's now cd from this particular root directory, from this particular directory, which is new directory, to the root directory. Now this is it. Now the difference between ... and dash when using the cd command is that this ... is just going to take you one directory backward. That means going to take you one directory backward. Now to explain this, I will have to use cd dash. Now the cd dash, it takes you to your previous working directory. So if I do this, I'm going to go back to the new directory. However, if I do cd ... I go back to Linux basics. But then from Linux basics, if I decide to do cd var and log, now if I do my cd ... I'm going to go back to the var directory. If I do my cd dash, I go back to the log directory. cd dash takes you to your previous directory, while cd ... takes you one directory backward. Now I've hit that particular point there, because that's what I want to actually expose us to, because sometimes we don't know even the cd dash actually exists. Most times when you're just getting started using the Linux terminal, you see a situation people are using ... to takes you back to your directory, to your previous directory. It is actually conditional. That's if you are going about it in a linear manner. That means from your Linux basics here to the new directory. So when you do your cd ... it's going to take you back. But now you can see we changed our directory non-linearly. That means from this particular point here, we changed directly to, we went back one directory back, and then we moved to an entirely different directory. You can see. So if you are going to do the cd dot, it takes you back to what? The log. All right, it takes you back to the var rather. All right, cool. So now I will want to go back to my Linux basics directory ls. Now this is what we have. All right, now another command. Let's talk about the rmdir command. Now just as mkdir command creates a directory, the rmdir command deletes a directory. However, it is used for deleting an empty directory. Let's take note of that. It deletes an empty directory. Now I'm going to be creating another directory. Let's call this new directory 2. Okay, so if I run ls, I have this. Now I'm going to be okay. Now another command again. Let's talk about the mv command. Now the mv command is actually used for two things: for deleting and also for moving and also for renaming. Now you could verify whatever I'm saying by using the mv command. Now you can see it's used for renaming and also for moving. Okay, all right, so let's say I want to rename test3, this test3 here. Let's say I want to rename it from test3 to sam test. So what I'll do is mv the name of source file, which is test3, and then the name of my new file right now. So I'm going to call this sam and test, right? Then if I run my ls, now you see I have sam test. Okay, I've successfully been able to rename my file. Now what if I want to also move the file? What I'll do is what? mv sam test, which is the source file. Then I'm also going to provide the destination, which is let's take it to new directory. So it's a new directory. Enter. Now what happens here? Now you can see I no longer have sam test. However, now if I decide to do an ls in new directory, you can see I have sam test. So my new directory is not empty. Now let's go back to what? Our rmdir command. Now let's say we want to remove both our new directory and our new directory 2. So let's go. So new directory, let's go. Now you can see we have an error: directory not empty. Okay, let's try this for directory 2, and then let's go. Now you can see it has been able to remove what? Directory 2 successfully. However, new directory fails to what? Remove, because new directories contains a file called what? Sam test. So the rmdir is actually used to delete an empty directory. Okay, now let's learn about a new concept, still using the mkdir. Let's go mkdir flag p. Now the flag p stands for parent, or more like you creating a tree. So now let's say I want to create new 1, new 2, instead of comma / new 3. Now let's go. If I do an ls, you see I have new 1. Now if I look into my new 1, I would definitely have new 2 following what? This tree. If I also look into my new 2, I also have what? New 3. Okay, All right, so we've learned about something. Now we also know now that new3 is actually an empty directory, right? But then let's say we want to now remove a directory that is not empty. How are we able, or how are we going to do this? Well, we could do this using another command, which is what rom command. Now the rom command is actually used for removing a file. However, it can also be used in removing a directory. How does the rom removes a directory? It actually does that recursively. Okay, so let's start with rom you removing a file. So rom test, and then let's do test2. And if we do an ls, you see that test2 is no longer present. But then let's try something new. Let's do touch test. All right, cool. Okay, now I have test1, test2, test3, test4. Oh, let's make this up to starting from 5. Let's take this to 15. Okay. All right, perfect. Now let's say I have this kind of a situation, and I want to remove all files that starts or ends with a particular character or a particular alphabet or whatever. Now I can do rom down. Now I now need to specify how I want to do the matching. Now this is basically going to be done using regex, right? Okay, but then you don't really need to bother yourself about the regex part. Just know that okay, you could actually use wildcards. Yeah, they're basically called wildcards. Now this is one wildcard. Now if I do this particular one, it's actually going to be removing all files in my current working directory. So take notes. Try as much as possible not to use wildcards, or if you're using wildcards, be very specific. Be very specific, and also make sure you know what you are doing. Well, but for me here, I just want to remove all files that has, or all file that is actually having the name test on them. So I'm just going to do test. What this means now is any file that matches test, they are going to be deleted. And you can see all of them now has what test, test, test. I can still decide to even still put an underscore, because virtually all of them has an underscore. But then let's go with test. Then if I do this, and then let's just kind of a new option, variables. Now let's decide to kind of make this variable so that we could actually see it. And then now you can see remove test 1, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 2, 3, blah 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 down. Now if we do an ls, now you see I only have new one and new directory. Okay, now new one and new directory, they are not empty. Let's just create. No, we've talked about creating an empty directory. All right, cool. Now, how are we going to be removing an empty directory? Okay, we could actually remove an empty directory still using the rm command. However, we're going to be passing a flag called what? R. Okay, now to learn more about this command, that is why I actually start with what the man command. So try as much as possible to actually use the man command, because I can't really actually go in depth of this individual command. I'm basically just touching out those concepts or those areas that you just need to know about. And hey, if you are still with me up until this point, you are enjoying the video, hey, give me a subscribe. And if you're loving this, hit that like button, and also share this video out to your friends that might be starting their journey learning the Linux command line, or anyone in the LXSA program that's definitely in starting in the program. They definitely need this video. Okay, so let's get back to it. We have the rm flag r, and then we pass in the new directory. Okay, sorry, this is what I needed to do. All right, now if I do something like this, you can see now new directory is no longer there, but I can still use my rm with the option R to also remove an empty directory. Let's go. Call this new there R. Now I'm going to do something like this. Then now you can see. So this tells you that you could actually use rm flag R for removing both an empty and a non-empty directory, of which this is what I mostly do. I can't remember the last time I actually used an rm dir to actually remove an empty directory. I always use rm flag R. Okay, so that's about the rm command. We've also talked about the mv command, and yeah, before I forget, let's talk about the cp command. Okay, the cp command actually stands for copy. Yeah, now remember when you highlight something, yeah, let's say you highlight this and then you copy this, right? I've pressed Ctrl C to copy. Now if I want to paste this, I just need to come here, right, and then paste. And okay, you can see it's still the same word Sammy, but then we could still do the same thing for a file on our file system. We could still do the same thing for a file on our file system in the Linux terminal. Okay, so in this particular example, we're going to be learning about extra two new commands. And what are they? They are the cat and the echo. Okay, so let's talk about the echo. Now, the echo command is basically used for displaying a string or a character to the standard output, or in this case you can say echo command is actually used for displaying in a character or a string to our screen. So let's go. Echo, sorry, that should be echo Sammy, and you can see I have what Sammy, but then you can also use echo to actually write to a file. Right, you can use the echo to write to a file. Now how will you do that? You're actually going to do that through what they call redirection. Now I'm going to stop there because it's not really getting too kind of complex and it's really beyond the scope of this video, but hey, I think it's still a good one for us, for me to expose you to something like that. All right, so let's just say echo, then we use the greater than as a redirection. That's the symbol for the redirection there. All right, and then let's call this sammy.txt. Let's call this sammy.txt. Okay, now if I do this rather, I have what sammy.txt. All right, now we have used echo to display at the same time to write to a file. Same thing again, you could also use, now you could actually use the cat command to write to a file. At the same time, you can also use the cat command to display the content of a file. Okay, so let's say I use the cat command to display the content of a file. I'm going to give you all an assignment, and then if you're able to do this, drop it on the comment section. All right, I really want to see how you guys are actually banging this and hitting this. Okay, so I'm going to be using the cat command to display the content of the sammy.txt file. So cat sammy.txt, and then you can see I have what Sammy. Okay, now let's say I want to then copy sammy.txt to new.txt. Now you know the way copy works, right? The same word content. Okay, so I just need to do cp my source, which is sammy.txt, now the destination or the new file or the target. So let's call this new.txt. Okay, now if I do ls, I have new.txt. Now if I cat new, .txt, I have what Sammy, which is what literally the same thing. Okay, all right. Now we've learned a whole lot. Yeah, we've learned a whole lot. Okay. Now before we actually round up, let's look at this last command, which is what the sudo command. Now sometimes you might actually want to delete or carry out some actions that you really do not have permissions for, or the current user in which you are logged in as don't have permissions on that particular file, because currently say I'm logged in as what vagrant, right? Okay, so let's say let's try this. Let's say I want to create a directory now on the var folder, and let's call this var new. Let's call this var new, and then let's watch what it's going to. Now you can see I can't create that because it's saying what permission denied. But then I am able to look at the contents of the var directory, but I'm not able to do, or I'm not able to perform right actions on that particular directory, but I can actually read from that directory. But then let's say I want to ignore this. I can use the sudo command. Now the sudo command stands for super user do, like super user do. So sudo. What does this sudo tells us? This sudo allows us to carry out a particular action as though we are an administrator, like a temporary grants us an administrator privilege to run a particular command, and then returns us back to our current user. So when we do something like sudo var new, and then we press enter, immediately we do something like this. Now on my Linux terminal no longer sees vagrant as the one carrying out this action. Instead, it now sees the root user or the administrator or the super user as the one running this. And okay, so definitely it's asking me for my password. I'm not going to be putting that password in here. I'm not going to put in that password. Sorry. Okay. I'm not going to put in my password, but then once you provide a particular, sorry, I actually made an error. I just realized that. So this is it. Yep. Now if we do, sorry about that previously, you can see I now have what var new, because the sudo command here makes this command of creating a new directory be under the action of what the administrator. In the same way, if I decide also to remove this directory without adding the sudo, see I don't have permission. However, if I now do this with the sudo, I'm able to remove this, and then I can confirm this by doing that, and then you can see var new is no longer there. Okay, thank you for sticking through the end. Now if you enjoy this particular video, give me a like. Also share out this video to your friends, as many people that needs this particular content, because hey, you're helping them, and also you're also telling me that hey, I'm doing a great job. Thank you guys.